Dave Pulcinella has been a competitive bodybuilder for almost 30 years, competing for and winning many national titles before retiring in 2007. A nutrition and exercise counselor based in Delaware for most of that time, he has studied human physiology and exercise science, but feels that real-world experimentation and long-term experience is the best path to success. Over the years, he has helped to transform thousands of bodies and lives and has prepared hundreds of competitors for bodybuilding, figure, and bikini competitions. Dave is best known as the subject of the Raising the Bar documentary series, and his infamous video clip, The 6 Foods That Work, has drawn both praise and jeers from viewers. Lately, it seems that the jeers have been growing as a new generation of bodybuilders begins to reject the all-or-nothing bodybuilding philosophy of the past, which Dave represents. 19-year-old Ian McCarthy is quickly making a name for himself as a brashly outspoken opponent of what he considers to be the damaging bodybuilding myths that prevail in this sport. He is a strong proponent of a highly scientific approach to bodybuilding, and he advocates for balance, health, and safety. His YouTube and Facebook pages are growing in popularity and seem to polarize viewers into two camps: those who eagerly anticipate his latest video and those who simply hate his guts. Backed by the latest scientific research, Ian's position is that many of the extreme measures that are accepted as normal are not necessary to build one's physique, and that those who continue to deny this are simply uninformed. His goal is to spread scientific and truthful information about bodybuilding as much as he can. I have asked the two of them to sit down and discuss some of the more contentious topics that are currently dividing the bodybuilding community.
What is your thing with meal frequency?
Well, my thing is that many people in this industry, most people, in fact, in this industry, fitness models and self-declared gurus,
Right.
believe that it's necessary that people eat every 2 to 3 hours, or they'll say 5 to 6 meals a day, or you'll hear people say things like, I eat 10 meals a day to stoke the metabolic furnace.
Right.
This is a hugely overused cliche.
Right.
The problem is that they're just not correct to say that it's necessary to do that. And this is, science very often doesn't demonstrate things to a certainty, but there really isn't any research to speak of that shows with any, that really supports the claim that eating more frequently does anything for one's metabolism. Because we're talking about two things here. We're talking about basal metabolic rate, and we're talking about the thermic effect of food.
Right.
Neither of which is affected by how often you eat. Those are dictated by
That's a very good point.
how much you eat. And if you agree with that, well, then then we're on exactly the same
Right.
starting point. I just have a problem with people that have supposed positions of authority in this industry, basically pros, for example, who make these claims and they're just wrong. And when someone like myself comes along and points this out, their response is, I'm a pro, I've been training for 20 years, look at my trophies and all that.
Those things prove nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the fact that you agree with that, well, then again...
All right, we're done.
We don't have enough to disagree.
No, we don't disagree. I agree with you to a great degree. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
And that the necessity of it, I think, depends upon what you're trying to do. I do think, and we may disagree on this, that a metabolism is totally trainable. I do believe that. In other words, how quickly you burn through your food is totally trainable by how frequently you throw food at yourself. So if you're eating every 4 hours, you probably end up, after a while, being hungry every 4 hours.
Yeah.
If you're going every 3, you'll probably end up after a while being hungry every 3. If you go every 2, you're going to be hungry every 2, or even every 1.
Yeah.
Now, you can call that whatever you want to. You don't have to call it increasing your metabolism, but it definitely happens. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I agree. That's
Okay.
I think hunger is largely a function of how you're used to eating.
Right.
There are a number of reasons why hunger can't be trusted with regard to
I understand
dictating.
that. No, that wasn't done.
Right.
Do you believe that, let's start this way. Do you believe that you can train your body to get rid of toxins and recover quicker from exercise if you work out more frequently?
Yes, it's called the repeated bout effect, yeah.
If that's the case, then why Not that they're directly related, but why is it so out of the question that you could train your body to burn through fuel more quickly by eating more frequently? Why does the one true and the other ones can't possibly be true?
Well, it's a... I don't understand there is, in fact, no relationship. The repeated bout effect, although it's not... The mechanism isn't particularly well understood. It is... There's a huge amount of anecdote and then increasingly real evidence that the more frequently you train a body part, the more frequently it recovers. This doesn't make... It doesn't make sense to the sort of traditional bodybuilder with the traditional thinking of train a muscle and then you need 5 to 7 days to recover and all of this. But it makes sense when you start thinking about in nature where humans evolved. It wasn't a matter of go and find prey and then sit around for a week.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. So we will understand with time the mechanisms behind the repeated bout effect. Now, with regard to metabolism, what you said sounds plausible, but the evidence just doesn't go that way.
And I'm not saying that the mechanisms between the example I gave, obviously it's completely separate, and I understand that. But it's like, it's an example of something that can be trained in the body. Why can't, even though the science right now doesn't support it, why can't it possibly be true? Especially since every time I've done it, it's worked for me and countless others.
Right.
You know what I mean? And here's a question I have to pose to you.
Sure.
If you're doing something towards your bodybuilding, to get yourself a better bodybuilder.
Yes.
If you're doing a behavior and it's obviously working, will you stop doing it because you can't find the research to back it up?
No.
Then
but
there's some room for some educated BroScience?
Well, but here's
educated.
Here's the error you're making, though. The research we have, it's not that it doesn't support your position. It's that it actually refutes your position. We have research. Some of it's mediocre, but the high quality research you look at where they actually very precisely control how much people eat and how frequently everything is controlled.
That's the part I have a problem with.
And they directly measure how much energy these people are actually using. There's no evidence at all that altering meal frequency does anything for basal metabolism or thermic effect. So again, it's not that the science doesn't support your position, it's that all of the research we have actually refutes it, what you're saying.
It goes against it.
Science is not about... an error is often made that people think science is all about proving things. Proofs are for mathematics.
Right.
What science can do very well is refute theories. For example, for someone to disprove evolution, all they have to do is go to the Precambrian era and find rabbit bones. That's it. Darwinian theory is wrong. Exact same thing here. You have a theory, and it sounds coherent. I'll admit, it for anyone who doesn't have any scientific background, it's very inviting.
Right.
It sounds commonsensical. You eat more often. It's like a furnace. It's going to burn hotter, and all these various analogies. But we have so much research. Every single review of the research says the same thing, that the evidence for the increased meal frequency affecting metabolism, there's no evidence at all of any causational relationship. They're always, like I said, there's mediocre research based upon people reporting how much they're eating and then reporting how much weight they've lost, things like this. Research like that is essentially useless. It's close, not entirely, but very close. The research where everything is controlled by the researchers shows over and over again not any difference.
I think your knowledge of the research in this particular case is actually hurting you. Let me ask you this. Have you ever, for a 20-week span of time, 20 weeks, which is, in my opinion, how long it needs to happen, eaten an appropriate whole food meal every 2 hours on the dot? Have you done that?
Yes.
You have done that?
I have.
On the dot?
Oh, yeah.
Every 2 hours for 20 weeks?
I started training early 2008, but a lot of that was wasted. I started bulking properly later in that year, and I went from like 107. I started training as an anorexic, a little bit shorter than I am now. I'm 5'9". I was 5'7", 94 pounds. That's where I started.
Right.
Basically, I bulked 2008 and then all the way into 2010. But I got to the point where I realized, okay, I've taken it too far. I was like 230 pounds. So I said, okay, I'm going to cut. But what I'm going to do for this cut is just essentially as an experiment. I said, okay, I'll do this the bro way. 5 to 7 meals a day. Very similar to the 6 foods that work that you've described. It was, chicken breast and broccoli and asparagus and green beans and sweet potato and some rice and stuff like this. Oatmeal and all this. And I lost about, went from 230 or 235 to about 175. The thing is, though, I'm also very easily able to do that while eating supposed junk foods and eating one large meal per day. I mean, there's no... In other words, I've done what you've described, and I think I'd rather shoot myself in the head than do that again.
I agree.
And
it's not for everybody.
That's something that we'll bring up, or maybe this is when we should bring it up, is that given that the research is so strong in one direction, and the fact that eating every 2 to 3 hours, to me, impedes people's ability to function. Now, you were a competitive bodybuilder, and that's completely different.
You have to admit
competitive bodybuilders do. It's all about the bodybuilding,
and a lot of what I'm talking about is in reference to doing that.
Oh yeah,
which you have not done. You've not taken your body there.
Yes,
and I have to tell you, I have to say this. It's a completely different set of rules once you get there. It really does become something. The more specific the thing is that you're trying to do with your body, the more specific the decisions you have to make and the choices.
Sure.
Now, does it? Here's a good example. Look. Okay, I'm going to do this. Does that make a lot of a difference right here and right now? I'm still in the room, right?
Yeah.
If I do that enough times in a row, I'm in California. So I'm going to eat, if I think that eating every 2 hours, because of the thermic effect that it creates, is going to burn an extra 20 calories by the end of the day, and by the end of 20 weeks, that could add up to 2 pounds of fat loss.
Oh, yeah.
For a contest, that could mean the difference between 1st and 5th place. You're goddamn right I'm going to do it. And I do believe that it does do that. But it doesn't matter to someone like you who's not trying to do that.
Well, no.
And I fully respect and understand that. Another thing I think is wrong with those, this is just my opinion.
Yeah.
All the studies that have been done on eating every 2 hours are done by people. They're just people.
Yeah.
And the subjects are just people. They're fallible. I don't believe... I can count on one hand how many people I've seen, even serious bodybuilders, over the years I've been in this sport, eat every 2 hours on the... I'm not talking about every 2.5 or 2 3/4.
Yeah.
I'm talking about every 2 hours, a whole food meal, which I also believe is important, not shakes, because they're liquid. Okay? It's my thing. I know. It's my thing. Again, the thermic effect, if it's this much over time, it matters to me. Again, that doesn't matter to you. Or someone who's just trying to get fit, in shape, or even cut. The difference between liquid and solid meals does not matter.
No, I'll debate you on your own ground. If you want to talk about whether or not these things matter to pros or people that are close to being pros, that's what I'll talk about. When you say that you think that it maybe gives you 20 calories a day additionally, I mean, I'll admit that would be hard to determine, but my question to you would be, do you have empirical evidence for this? And the fact that you can't say that you do.
Here's my bottom line.
Yes.
And I think this is going to be the bottom line for a lot of people. I really do.
Yeah.
It's great to start. I believe there are 4 kinds of people in this industry. Okay.
Sure.
Person number 1, the person who has all the scientific knowledge in the world.
Right.
But hasn't done it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say done it, what I mean by that is get down to like infinitesimal levels of body fat while maintaining all this muscle. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's person number 1. Person number 2 is the person who doesn't have any scientific knowledge, but has done it.
Sure.
I know a lot of IFBB pros that fall into that category. All right, they don't know anything. Maybe they have somebody who's advising them, but they don't have the knowledge, but they've done it. The third person is the person who does have the knowledge and has done it.
Yes.
Very good person to take advice from. Person number 4 is the person who has the scientific knowledge, has done it, and has also done it for thousands of other people.
Yeah.
That 4th person is me, because I've been in the business for 20 years, and as of this year, I'm approaching 10,000 people that I've worked with. So I've had an amazing opportunity, I feel, in my life to have sort of an experiment of sorts going on in my office.
Sure.
where I adjust food, adjust cardio, adjust supplementation, see the person, look at their journal, see how well they follow. The compliance is important, and monitor what's happening with them, as well as having done it on myself since the early 80s.
Yeah.
So I have an amazing amount of empirical knowledge, and I started off with the biomechanics and the physiology, exercise physiology, and all those courses. I've had them. I know the science, and I know the practical application of that science, and I've seen how it works. And I think that is the best person to listen to as far as taking advice from. Would you agree with that? Because there is a certain set of knowledge that you can't have unless you've pushed your body into that realm, I think.
I like what Lawrence Krauss has said. He says that he doesn't believe anything. He follows evidence. So I don't listen to people. I don't find guys.
If you follow evidence, you have to allow a little break for some form of educated, intelligent BroScience in this sport, since bioindividuality is huge.
That sounds like white noise to me, to be honest.
Tell me why. Again, this goes back to why I asked you a question earlier. I said, if you were doing something and it was working, would you stop doing it because the science wasn't there? You said, no, I would continue to do it. Right there, you're practicing BroScience. Because you're doing something because it works. Only because it works. Which is fine. In this sport, that's how we create champions.
No, good examples of BroScience are things that we know are wrong.
I will tell you, here's what I consider.
There are things that are a gray area where the science hasn't said anything yet.
Okay.
And so we can make the best we can do is make educated guesses.
In the 1930s and 40s.
Yes.
Science could not explain how a bumblebee flies. Mathematically and aerodynamically, it shouldn't happen.
I've heard.
And yet bumblebees were flying.
Yes.
Right? But they couldn't explain it. Decades later, they figured out that they weren't taking into account the fact that the wing pivots, which creates more lift. Bumblebees were still flying, though, weren't they?
Yes.
Even though the science couldn't prove it.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do we know that every bit of science that we have today is explaining every single thing that's out there? Is it possible that there's something you can do that hasn't been proven by the science yet, but that fucking works?
Of course. But I haven't said otherwise.
That's BroScience.
No, that's just where it's... So you're saying... I just completely disagree. BroScience to me is where we know something's wrong.
Here's an example I think of BroScience.
Okay.
BroScience to me is someone who insists on doing side bends to burn the fat here.
Oh, yeah.
Or someone who is doing concentration curls for a peak.
Why is that BroScience? Because we know with the certainty that it's wrong.
Because no one has ever done a concentration curl and said, oh, my bicep was flat and now it's peaked. That has never happened.
The more we learn, the more we will understand how much we don't know.
Right.
Just look at this. It's not just within bodybuilding, obviously. I'm not endorsing science purely within bodybuilding. I'm endorsing a scientific worldview. So with regard to, I don't know, even something as big as the beginning of the universe. Okay, well, we have some concept of the Big Bang, and then it might have come from a quantum fluctuation. Where did that come from, and so on. There will always be questions that we haven't answered yet. So there are always going to be things, even within a realm as microcosmic as bodybuilding, there are going to be questions that we haven't answered yet. So I wouldn't say that if we have a category of something where the science just really hasn't given us anything yet, I wouldn't say that qualifies as BroScience.
Right.
BroScience to me is someone saying drinking... This was Hani Rambod who said this. Okay, so this is not just a no one. He said, or I read in Flex magazine one of his clients saying that he said that drinking whey protein makes your muscles soft. That's just it's just bullshit.
Dude, I'm with you on that.
It's complete bullshit.
Look, I'm going to tell you this right now.
That is BroScience because we know for an absolute certainty that's absolute nonsense.
I don't have respect for a lot of the gurus in the industry.
Right.
I really don't. I actually reserve that for very, very few people. I actually saw a video clip of Phil Heath the other day.
Yes.
And he was talking about his food intake, right?
Right.
He's got his meals up there, and he's like, now this is what I eat for my pre-workout, and this is what I've been eating lately. Now, lately I've been doing a lot of fish because fish will thin your skin.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
He believes that.
Yeah.
Right. He actually thinks that. Like
exactly.
The fish goes in, and it knows to go to the skin
right.
and make it thinner. I'm like, How can you possibly think that and be Mr. Olympia? Because
Yeah.
he doesn't have to know that that's bullshit to be Mr. Olympia because he was born of Mr. and Mrs. Heath.
But that's actually exactly my point. That's a slightly different thing, but how people will go to Phil Heath as if he's an expert on building muscle.
And they listen to him.
He told me
and people are hanging on that video.
I talked to him on Twitter, or I tried. I mean, it was pointless, but I
saw your video.
I asked him about whey protein, and he said, "Yeah, man, that's cool, but you should see how meats work too, or something." It was just nonsense. It's like
right.
I actually had people tell me. They said, I don't think that Phil wrote that because Phil is not that inarticulate. He could have done better than this.
He probably didn't write that
nonsense sentence.
But I've often found that the last person you should go up to and ask for advice is the guy who looks the best.
Yeah, no one should ask.
He hasn't had to do much to get there. I remember there was a guy in the gym years ago whose arms were huge, right? So everyone was asking him how to get big arms.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't fucking know. And his advice was to eat chocolate cake to get big arms. Because if he ate a bunch of chocolate cake the day before arm workout, he got a humongous pump in his arms. Therefore, chocolate cake equals big arms. And people were eating their chocolate cake.
Yeah, I mean, I've always laughed, Jay Cutler. People are like, how do you build your quads, Jay? And there are pictures of him when he was 18
With
and his quads were like
quads.
32 inches already. Like, yeah, it's...
Ask him how he built the body part he didn't have before he started lifting. I have a lot of this knowledge about how the human body works.
Sure.
And I've taken that, right? And I've done some things with my diet and with my training that are quote unquote wrong.
Right.
By the textbook. But if I had stayed with the...
give me an example?
Yeah, my pull downs are horrible. Have you ever seen me do pull downs? It's absolutely ridiculous. People call it a row down. They say, I'm never going to get lats doing it that way, and yet my lats were these big fucking ham hocks under my arms when I was competing. And I discovered way early in my career that if I did pull downs by scapular retraction rather, right?
Yeah.
And just, complete isolation of the torso at the 45-degree angle and all that textbook stuff, nothing would happen. I wouldn't get a pump. I'd feel it in my arms.
Yeah.
Right? However, if I put the weight way down there, right? And I put the close grip handle on there and I let it come up and pull, and then pull from that stretched position all the way down and pull back, and it's kind of like a row.
Right.
I could use a lot more weight, time under tension, right?
Sure.
My lats, I couldn't even lift my arm the next day. They were so sore. Not that that's the only indication of the workout. But, and my lats grew. So therefore, row downs became how I did pull downs,
How is that BroScience, though? I mean, what I would say is that...
Because it's not correct by the textbook.
Well, I mean, would you agree that using that form is less safe than using textbook form?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, then you and I are in complete agreement. The reason why I don't tell people to use form like that...
I would never teach someone to do that.
Exactly, but
What I would do, I'm willing to take that risk.
I mean, here's an example. Ronnie Coleman probably had the best back ever on any bodybuilder.
Yeah.
And of course, genetic aspect and the super supplements and all this. But everyone says, he did super heavy deadlifts, super heavy T-bar rows, super heavy barbell rows, this amazing back. Whereas a guy like Jay Cutler doesn't do all those crazy weights, and his back just looks like nothing compared to Ronnie's. So I'm not saying that the way Ronnie trained his back was BroScience, but training like that entails higher injury risk, which is what ended his career.
Yeah.
So if you agree with me on that, then we're not actually disagreeing about that.
I do. I agree. But
if you agree that you want to teach someone, okay, this is how you should do pull downs with 300 pounds.
And here's something else I need to explain to you is that I don't teach people every 2 hours either.
Right.
I don't teach that. I do it.
Sure.
Because every time I've done it, I've ended up with see-through skin.
But
after 20 weeks. Of course, there's other factors too. But every time, and see, here's what I have the advantage of having had.
Right.
Over 20 years of a bodybuilding career, I've tried everything, and I don't just dabble in it. Mm-hmm. I've tried a certain protocol all the way to its end.
Sure.
Each and every year, adding something, subtracting something, and trying something new. So I know that every 2 works for me better than every 3 because I've done both.
Right.
So to me, you don't have to call it speeding up your metabolism, but whatever it's doing, by the end of 20 weeks, it made me more shredded than it would have if I did every 4 or every 3. So I do it.
So you've done...
If you came to me for a diet, I wouldn't make necessarily,
right.
Depends on where you're at, make you do that.
But are you saying then that you've done a whole 20-week contest prep diet, eating every 5 hours or something?
5, 4, 3. too.
And what happened when
Can
you
you
ate
believe that?
what happened when you ate every 5 hours?
I
What were the negative effects?
The negative effects were I got to a certain point in my physique,
Right.
and I wouldn't get past that. Because I can only eat a certain amount of calories doing it that way, because I couldn't, like, the size of the meals.
Sure.
As I grew, the amount of calories you need to take in as your body becomes a different machine needs to increase. So I found that I wasn't able to get enough food in. My metabolism, or the rate at which I burned through food, call it what you will, only got to a certain point, and my physique only got to a certain point. And that point was winning local and state shows.
Right.
But my goal became to turn pro.
Sure.
So I had to figure out a better way to do things. And part of that better way included eating more frequently, simply because it works.
But you think of all the possible variables that it was the meal frequency?
I do. Because I kept everything else the same.
Right.
Everything else the same, Ian.
So your macronutrient intake exactly the same.
Trust me, I have the most amazing, ridiculous, controlled environment for myself.
Yeah, I mean,
It borders on insane.
It's not that I think you're lying. I just find that incredibly hard to believe.
I find it incredibly hard to believe that you ate every 2 hours on the dot, not 2.5, not 3, for 20 weeks. And I guarantee you the people in the studies that were done on eating frequency did not do that.
No, the studies I'm
people.
talking about where they were actually in.
Were they watching these people 24/7?
Yeah, we have research like that.
For how long?
Some number of weeks. I'd have to look at the specific.
And they couldn't come up with any biomarkers that showed an increase in...
Nothing.
Guess what I say to that? I don't give a shit. You know why? Because it works. It just does. I trust me on that. It works.
But see,
not only for myself, but for all the people I've ever had do it. Now, that's not a lot of people, because my average client, I will not have them do that.
Well, okay, what do you say of other coaches that take the totally different approach and their clients say the same thing about what they do? I mean, there's a team of admittedly natural bodybuilders, so I don't know if that's... One could argue it's not relevant. I think it is relevant, but the 4 natural bodybuilding coaches, they are... As far as I know, all 4 of them are natural, competitive, professional bodybuilders. They all have pro cards. They all have some number of clients, and then they work together as one group called 3D Muscle Journey or something.
Okay.
They don't tell their clients about meal frequency. They let them eat however... They can do 2 big meals a day or 6 or whatever. They just give them macronutrient numbers. They tell them, eat a reasonable amount of fruit and veggies to get your micronutrients, and, basic list of supplements, and this is how you should train. But they let the clients take care of meal frequency.
Okay.
And their clients rave about how awesome that is, because there are people... Or Martin Birkin.
I'm sure they do rave about it.
Have you heard about intermittent fasting?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Martin Birkin has guys, admitted these are guys in Europe, but they're winning shows absolutely shredded to the bone.
Right.
And they're eating 1 whole food meal per day.
Listen.
So here's
as you get older in
Can
this...
I, one sentence?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is the problem. Well, it's 2 sentences, sort of. This is the problem.
Lie, man.
This is the problem I have with Anecdote. Is you can give your anecdote, and again, I don't think you're lying. I believe you. I find it hard. I find
I'm crazy.
I find the actual claim hard to believe.
Yeah.
But the problem is you have that anecdote, and there are other people that have this anecdote of they used to eat 6 meals a day and they hated it and had no social life and couldn't function and just felt like shit all the time, and now they just do 2 meals a day. Their results are exactly the same.
Right.
And
I believe that. And here's the thing: when you're young and you learn your first tidbits of knowledge, right?
Yes.
The pendulum's over here. This is the way it's done, right? I've seen it all the time. Young people have this thing where there's a way to do this. This is it, right? Okay. As you get older, the pendulum swings more towards the middle. As you learn more, you realize, dude, there's just not one way to do this. I have my way.
Yeah.
And other people have their way. If someone's getting shredded intermittent fasting, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start doing it because, I've never done it. I don't know enough about it. I can admit that.
Yeah.
And I do things my way, and it works. I've put people on stage shredded, and I have many champions, and I've won national titles, all this stuff, which is the bottom line for my clients who are competing. The bottom line is, can you put me on stage shredded? Not can back this up by science or other people doing it differently, etc. So, as I've matured in this sport and with my knowledge, I've become much more accepting of other ways of doing things that aren't mine, and I don't really. honestly don't care how you do it. If you're enjoying it and it's working.
Sure. I don't have any real problem with anything you just said. I'm specifically talking about the scientific claim that eating more frequently increases basal metabolism and or the thermic effect of food. Now, I'm not quite sure which view you actually hold. If you honestly think that what I've just described, the proposition I've just described, I have a problem with that because as far as I'm concerned, there's a huge body of high quality research that demonstrates that view to be incorrect. Now, if you don't really hold to that view, if you feel that eating more frequently, maybe it's better because your meals don't have to be as big, maybe you're more energetic, maybe you just like eating that often, any of those things, that's fine because that falls under the category of personal preference.
Right.
I completely agree with you. I wouldn't say you eat every 2 hours, you're a fucking idiot, you should do it this way. I mean, I have no reason to be politically correct, but that's not what I'm saying at all. But my problem is with the gurus, like you've described, or people that declare themselves as experts. And then they go out and they talk to teens or young people that have no knowledge, and they say, you better eat 6 to 8 meals a day. And these are kids in high school and college, and it ruins relationships.
And lives.
Absolutely. That's what I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with someone who is a pro or wants to be a professional bodybuilder. If your whole life is bodybuilding, then hell yeah, do it however the hell you want. I mean, there are some pros that do just fantastically stupid things. Kai Green's coach, George Farah, says, have a whey protein hydrolysate immediately after you train, and then 30 minutes later have carbs and all this. If he really wants to do that and that makes him feel good, that's fine. I have a problem with it when he goes and gives a seminar and he's telling people my age that they better do that or their workout is ruined. That's shit.
Right.
He's wrong.
I agree.
And I'm going to call him on that. But if he wants to do it, and if he wants to dance in a little circle and pray before going through every doorway he sees, he can do that too. But as soon as it affects anyone else, that's when I care.
I don't blame you. I mean, you have a cause with that,
and you actually just said that you don't make all of your. You want to tell all of your clients to do that.
Here's what I do with my average client. I have them chart their food for a week.
Yeah.
Find out how many calories they're taking in. Create a deficit. Arrange the macros, and then come up with a meal plan based on foods they like.
Yeah.
And then come up with lists of exchanges. That's if it fits your macros. It's
something very close.
It's an exchange diet. It's what it's called. It's been around since the 80s.
Yeah.
Nutrition analysis started.
Diabetic exchange.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I do my average.
What do you do with peanut butter?
Why does everyone thinks peanut butter is a protein?
It's a protein source.
It's a protein, man.
It's like the lowest quality protein.
I get all my protein from peanut butter. I actually ban a lot of my women from peanut butter because they cannot.
They binge on it.
They cannot have a tablespoon of it. They will eat an entire jar of it.
Oh yeah, they're trigger foods for.
Anyway, I have to say this right now.
Yes.
I have to admit that you have convinced me that there is scientific evidence proving that you cannot speed up your metabolism by eating more frequently. I believe you, and you have converted me to believing that. However, I'm not going to stop doing it. I'll tell you why. This reminds me of a guy I used to work out with 20 years ago named Steve, right? And we worked out at the same gym, and we used to compete together. And Steve was much more genetically gifted than me.
Sure.
When we would start getting ready for shows, his starting point looked way better than my starting point.
Right.
I was skinny fat, and he was naturally more muscular and carried more muscle and less fat than me. Sure. Starting point, just base genetics, right? He was very hung up on the science, very much so, to the point where he would not do anything in the gym or with his diet unless it could be backed up by the research. Fine. He would see me doing things and he'd start to tell me how that's not right, that's not good, it's just not. And I'd be like, well, I do it because this is what happens when I do it. And he would take out a book, right? And he'd go, look, it's right here in black and white. Right there in black and white. And sit back all triumphantly. I said, that's great.
Yeah.
Duly noted. I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing because it works. So although I believe that the research that we have today does not, it actually disproves that it works.
Yes.
I think it works. works.
No, the science doesn't disprove that it works.
Right.
It disproves specifically the claim that it affects metabolism in the way I
Right.
described. And something I want to bring up now, because I've wanted to bring up...
Can we make a distinction between
Wait.
it works and it increases metabolism? Who gives a fuck if it increases your metabolism?
Here's the distinction that I find interesting. Effective versus optimal.
Right.
Now, there is a huge variance in individual genetics, obviously.
Right.
Phil Heath doesn't train arms, 23-inch arms.
Right, exactly.
Jay Cutler, used to squat 700, now he squats 315. His legs are just as big, But nonetheless, the idea of there being some optimal protocol for each person is a valid concept. So something can be effective, but be less than optimal. Again, this is not my analogy. I got it from a gentleman named Eric Helms, but he said, if you have two people and one person comes to a door and just opens the door and walks through it, that gets them through the door. If another person comes to the door, does a little dance, prays, and smokes a cigarette and, whatever it is, and then they open the door and walk through it.
Right.
They both get through the door, but one of them is going to get through the door
optimally,
more efficiently, right? So that's what I'm saying. So there are prime examples of people that train with ridiculously high volume. Like really, really,
but see, you're
40 sets per body part.
You're not presenting any better way to do things than every two. You're just presenting an as good a way, in your opinion, while making it easier and less addictive.
Yeah, I would just argue that it's...
So it's not like you're coming up with the better way to walk through the door. You're coming up with the same way to walk through the door, only it's easier to adhere to.
Yeah, I don't think it's better in terms of metabolism. I think it's better in terms of being able to function as a human.
I agree.
And yeah, so...
I would love it if I could have gotten as shredded as I did, eating every 3 hours. It just wasn't a reality. I don't know why, and I can't explain it through science. I just abandoned myself to it,
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that we actually disagree a lot less than I expected, which is slightly refreshing and also means that we didn't get to argue as much as I expected. But
we're not done yet.
Yes.
Did you do your research on me before you came here?
No, but I expected a hostile, not physically hostile, but no, we disagree a lot less than I expected because it sounds like on most things we agree. It's just he has this experience of a certain protocol working better than another, which again, I don't think he's lying. I can't explain that.
It's definitely true, Ian.
Okay,
it's in my mind it has become fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
William James wrote a book called Varieties of Religious Experience, and what he said was, in terms of subjective reality, you can't say that someone's lying, but that doesn't mean they can apply it objectively.
It's true.
And that's the view I take on that. So I've had people tell me similar stories about how much glutamine helped their joints.
Right.
As if taking glutamine is going to do anything for your joints. But they really believe that, and that's real for them. So that's okay.
Well, there's a lot to be said for placebo.
Right.
A lot to be said for what you think becoming reality.
And that's a whole other discussion, which we might get to later. But with regard to my audience, 50 to 55% of people on the No Bullshit Bodybuilding Facebook page, and I'm assuming roughly that number for the YouTube channel. I'm sure I could find it out if I was more technically inclined. But 50 to 55% are males between the ages of 18 and 24.
Ah.
So these are college-age guys.
Very impressionable. Very impressionable.
So given what the research says about meal frequency, I really don't want to be telling these guys eat 8 times a day.
Right.
Because there was a guy who posted, this was over a year ago now, a gentleman who posted on some Facebook group, and he said, my girlfriend just dumped me because he took a protein shake to her house so that after sex he could immediately slam a shake.
Oh my God.
But this is a common story. I've heard this over and over again.
Person.
No, but he had to get his protein in.
That's so stupid.
But I mean, what if you are in the middle of a contest prep and you have to eat every 2 hours and sex just lands right there? Are you going to say, I can't have sex with you today? Are you serious?
I've done it. I can't have sex with you today, but I'll have sex with you after my meal and before my next one.
Okay.
Yep. I've done it.
Well,
but for me, you have to understand. But for me, it's different than it is for you.
I don't know what to say to that.
I had a pro card at stake, and I had lost it by. I had lost the pro card by 1 point the year before, and I was going to get it this year, and I was going to leave no stone unturned, including that one.
All right. I mean.
Okay.
I guess in a way I rest my case.
Have you ever been an athlete of any kind?
That's what I don't want college age guys doing.
Right.
If you think that it's giving you a 0.2% advantage, and that might be why you win a pro card.
I don't recommend this to anybody.
Yeah.
I look back.
I like what Dorian Yates said about it. He said, last 6 weeks, I really wish I could have sex, but I'm just so tired. Man.
I actually ridicule myself back then. Because it's ridiculous. But I wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
I got to where I was doing that.
Sure.
And I'm sure with my genetics, I would never have gotten where I did unless I was that fanatical about it.
Have I ever been an athlete?
Yes.
I think
from age 4 to age 10, I played soccer, but
that doesn't count. I mean, like
I know. No, but you'll relate to this though. I didn't like it because I didn't like having to rely on other people.
I hate team sports.
Because my team always sucked, and it's easy to say this. I was a decent player, but there were a number of kids that just didn't care at all. So our team always lost, and I always felt like it was largely other people's fault. And so very quickly I got turned off. So I've never played football. I really know very little about it, and so I got into lifting. Lifted a few times with my father, but really 14, 15. And what I love about it is it sounds self-centered and narcissistic to say this, but it's all about me.
Absolutely.
in that if I can find a gym that's open at 2 a.m. and I want to go train, I'm going to go train. I don't have to wait for 10 people to show up. And if I at the same time, if I mess up my diet, that's me.
Yeah.
And there's something good about that, too.
You stand or fall by your own behavior and not anyone else's. That's one of the things I always loved about bodybuilding was that it's just me, man.
Yeah.
And if I don't win, it's just because of me.
Yeah.
Not because of teammates that were out partying the night before.
Yeah, but if the question is, have I ever... I've never really had...
It was really not that important a question, though.
Oh.
Yeah.
But, well,
I'm just saying, as an athlete, you tend to start looking at things more differently because you put everything in your life into a perspective of, if I do this thing, no matter what it is, even if it's having sex, is this going to take me towards or away from my goal? And if it takes you away from it, you're not going to do it, depending on how intense of an athlete you really are.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that not with regard to bodybuilding, with regard to other things I do. But that's actually one thing about me that has become very important, is that bodybuilding has to be a part of my life, not my life.
Right.
Because something that I've realized, and I've spent a huge amount of time trying to get other people not just my age, other people to realize this as well. Almost no one has the genetics necessary to be an IFBB pro. People think, if you just spend $5,000 on HGH and insulin every month, like, come on, no idea what they're talking about. It's genetics. Genetics dictate the shape of your muscles, how you respond to the drugs, everything. And almost no one has those genetics. So the people that don't have those genetics shouldn't be wasting their time chasing a goal that won't happen. The people that can, that's fine. The Jay Cutler and the Phil Heath. It's not that bodybuilding.
If you say that, then my whole life was misspent, and I have a problem believing that.
Well, I mean, I don't know that much about your life, but
what I'm saying is I dedicated my life to the end of becoming an IFBB pro, and you don't certainly fall into the category of someone who didn't have the genetic wherewithal to do so.
Well, I mean, it obviously...
Unless you look at it in hindsight, and then it's hard to argue the whole thing. Maybe I did have the genetics if I was able to take my body to that point.
Yeah.
But what I had to do to get there...
But similarly, I've had people come to me and say, I spent... actually, do you know who Garrison Keillor is?
Yeah.
On the radio.
Yeah.
His son, who is in his mid-50s, I think... wait, no, he's got to be younger than that. But he said I was talking to Garrison Keillor, and I was wearing a bodybuilding.com shirt. This is a hilarious story. I don't know why I haven't told it before. And he says, I wanted to talk to him about his book. And then he goes, bodybuilding.com. I said, yeah. He's like, so how far are you going to take bodybuilding? And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, you better be careful, because my son, who's now middle-aged, wasted all of his young years trying to be a bodybuilder and didn't succeed, and now he has this midlife crisis and all this. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I don't want people to do, is make bodybuilding not a part of their life, not something that adds to their life, but something that assimilates everything, and it becomes all about bodybuilding.
It sounds to me almost like you're saying, don't shoot for something in life that you really, really want.
Well, if someone's only goal if someone's only
If that's
goal,
their only goal, that's pretty sad. If it's the
that's
only
what Jay
thing
Cutler
that
said.
they
Jay
do.
Cutler said he saw some magazine when he was 13 or something, and that's all he ever wanted to be was a bodybuilder.
Lucky for him, luckily for him, he had the genetics to do it. Otherwise, I agree that would have been a life wasted.
Yeah.
You have to have something else that makes you you other than that. But
Sure.
I did dedicate a huge chunk of myself to this one end, and I don't regret it. Even though I never had, obviously didn't have the genetics to turn pro, I came really, really close, and I learned a lot about myself, and I can apply what I
Sure.
did to get there to anything in my life.
Actually, I suppose I could rephrase and say most people aren't going... I'm trying to think of how to put this, because I don't want to say to your face that I think your life has been a waste, but I hope you understand what I am getting at.
Even if you did tell me to my face,
Here's
I
a
wouldn't
prime
agree.
example. Here's a prime example. Well, I hope you wouldn't agree.
No.
Yeah, I hope not.
No, it was a life well spent,
But
regardless of the outcome.
here's a prime example of what I don't want people to do. I'll put it this way. I don't want young guys that are academically capable dropping out of college to pursue bodybuilding.
Can I ask you why you feel so passionately about that? Why do you
About-
care so much about them?
About
Just curious.
them?
Yeah.
Uh,
Where did that come from? You talk a lot about wanting to save these people from themselves, but why? What's the genesis of that?
I have no idea how to answer that question.
It's got to be fueled by something.
Well, specifically with regard to education, I think there's a tremendous waste. I've met so many people in my life that are extremely intelligent that haven't done what they could have done. So in this country, in order to be successful as any sort of, I'll say, intellectual, you're expected to have a degree. Even if it may just be a piece of paper, it's something you have to have. Well, one of my closest friends, I think he just turned 60, and he's told me that one of his biggest regrets in life is having not gone to engineering school when he was my age. And he's 60 now. It's too late. I mean, he has a good job. He trains people. He works for a company that's owned by ExxonMobil. I mean, he'll have a good retirement and all this, but he totally missed that part of his life. And I see that so often. You know, people that say, oh yeah, I'm going to take a gap year. And then they don't go to college. Or my cousin, I feel like I'm picking on him because I always use him as an example, but I think he's 28 something now. Stunningly intelligent. It blows me away how smart this person is. Never went to college. He signed up for the SAT, decided not to go. Like, if someone had really been there, supportive, and said, you know, you can do this. Just do it. Just a day at a time, get through it. It'll be over soon, and then you'll be college educated, and then it won't be a waste. But no. And then 10 years later, he's exactly where he was. So
you're saying
I'm not sure I like the word save. I'm not
well. So
inviting
you're
people
saying a big part of this crusade of yours with the no bullshit bodybuilding, etc., is a selfless pursuit. It's for other people so that they don't waste their time with bodybuilding.
Well, I'm not sure if there is such a thing as a selfless action. Really, I mean, it makes me feel.
Well, that's
good.
what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get at how does this benefit Ian?
It gives me something to do. No,
Fair enough.
I forget who it was. Unfortunately, I'm terrible with names, but there was a Catholic philosopher, I believe, who said, you don't have the right to die until you've done something for humanity. Now, I'm not trying to overstate what I'm doing here. Trust me, it's not dealing with world hunger or vaccine for AIDS, but I do feel like there need to be more people willing to just stand for truth, not based on making tons of money or talking about how awesome they are and lots of things with their name all over it. I could make so much more money in this industry if I just did a few things here and there. But I don't care. That isn't interesting to me at all. The fact that I have videos on YouTube that there are ads on them. It's not that I have to admit that. Yes, there are ads on them, but people don't have to pay for that information. I feel really good about that. So
You know how many times in my business I wanted to turn around and just, because I look at people just telling people what they want to hear. and making so much more money than I am because they do that.
Yeah.
But I've always avoided that trap because I don't want to do that. And I always pride myself on, I'm going to tell people the real deal, my real deal.
Right.
And not do that. So I definitely understand where you're coming from with that. I could have gone the easy route. I can tell people what they want to hear. I can come out with a pill that contains pixie dust.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And people will take it. I know they'll take it, especially if I tell them they don't have to work out, they don't have to do cardio, and they can eat whatever they want. Lipozene. I wonder how many millions they've made on Lipozene.
Yeah.
Have you seen the infomercials?
I've never heard of it.
Do nothing other than take one Lipozene a day.
I don't watch television. So.
You know what? I could do that. I could come up with something like that.
Yeah.
I look the part. People would believe me. I could be like Dr. Oz. Whatever I say, people will do. But I avoid that because I don't want to do that to people.
Right.